This will be the last video I do for a while about clefs. The information I have been presenting here is very personal to me because it represents not only something that I think is very important to students who want to be able to read musical scores, it is also about something that I found insanely difficult myself and only recently mastered. How do we learn to read a clef that looks totally different, where nothing is the same as what we have already learned, and then start to get comfortable with this new thing? How do we convert our treble clef and bass clef notes to what they need to be in the alto clef as it is used by viola? First of all, this alto clef is one of the C clefs that were very common a few centuries ago. C clefs simply indicate that any of the 5 staff lines can be middle C. There were 5 of them in common use long ago. These various C clefs were invented to minimize the writing of ledger lines. In modern notation programs, ledger lines are no longer a big problem, but when you are writing them by hand, they take a long time to notate, and they can be insanely hard to line up and space properly. All but 2 of the C clefs have almost disappeared. One of these 2 is the alto clef, which is still used today, and every viola player needs it. To explore the idea of why the alto clef is used for viola today, I wrote another variation of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star that is close to 2 octaves in range. I wrote it in various ways to show many examples. In the treble clef, my theme goes down more than 4 ledger lines to low C. That is uncomfortably low for most people who read treble clef. In the bass clef, my theme goes up 4 ledger lines to B flat, and that is uncomfortably high for most people who read bass clef. We are back to Goldilocks again. This clef is too high, this clef is too low, and this clef is just right. But we have not yet found one that is just right. Pianists prefer a switch between treble and bass clef in the mid-range. As a pianist, this is effortless for me to write and very clear to read, but viola players would find this very uncomfortable to read. So this modern switch is not the solution we are looking for, not for viola. By putting this theme into alto clef, the music is much more comfortable to read for viola players. This is the Goldilocks just right solution. In fact, this is how music needs to be written for violists. There is really no other way for this stringed instrument because of several centuries of tradition. I use bass clef for a conversion because for me it looks very close to alto clef. So I simply read alto clef just like bass clef. But when I do, each note is 1 letter name too high. So I then have to mentally lower each note by 1 letter. You may notice that the result is 1 octave too low. It sounds suspiciously like something that was written for tuba. So my conversion actually demands a second step. The second step is to raise the result an octave higher. The octave switch is rather natural and 100% intuitive because of the pitch itself. These last 2 steps happen lightning fast for me, and I get the answers very quickly. But I assure you that this is the only way I am able to read the alto clef. Without these 2 conversions, I simply stare at the page helpless, totally lost and disoriented. Reading alto clef is very important to me. I need to be able to read viola parts to understand what is going on in orchestral scores and in string quartets. In the low and middle range, viola is always written in alto clef. I need this Goldilocks solution so much that I'm sharing it with all the students who have problems reading viola music. So hopefully after going down this final rabbit hole, you now understand how composers came to use the alto clef for the viola and why it saved them time when writing music. This Goldilocks solution finally took care of a problem that has stumped me for decades. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Leave comments about anything you like, comments about anything you'd like to see in the future, and remember that I consider all suggestions.